And of course, tinfoil hat aside, there have been plenty of shooting situations where if you don't carry a larger gun, considerable amount of ammunition, sometimes a better choice is help render medical aid, help people escape, get them to a place where you can deny the shooter access to them. And that's kind of how I teach my program is confront them or deny them access. And you can come up with a cool little acronym, CDI, confront, deny, incapacitate. Because everybody needs their own acronym. That's really important to set you apart from everybody else. But I wanted to simplify the program like that. As long as you do one of those three things, you're successful. You may not be as successful if you don't stop the shooter, but at least you save lives that otherwise might not have been saved. And sometimes that's a hard decision to make. And I don't think you're ever going to get that level of emotional training on a square range, shooting at paper.
Appreciate y'all coming on the show today, and welcome back to Shooters Symposium 2022. We're back recording what ended up being our third episode today. We've already had a really good time, really good conversation, and right now, sitting at the table, we've got Aaron Cowan and Kyle from Sons of Liberty, and I'm not going to say your last name because I always butcher it.
Grothues.
That's
Grothues.
it. We're also joined by Ian and Ike, and we're at an extremely small table in the corner of this place, and I apologize for the lighting and the camera work, but it is recording, and everybody is kind of in frame. So I'm going to start with Aaron and get a little background from you for our viewers or listeners who have been living in the dark for the past few years and might not know who Aaron Cowan is.
I'm a human being. I live on Earth.
Not a lizard person?
Yeah, not a lizard person, although accusations to the contrary. So I was born in a small town. Sometime after that, I grew up, as people do. Joined the Army, was in the Army, active duty, infantry, left the Army, became a cop, but in between there, security contractor. And that's kind of how I got into the teaching pipeline through law enforcement was, somebody identified, hey, this guy knows how to shoot, let's see if he can teach. And luckily that person was smart enough to know that the two things are not synonymous. So I was given some proper education, initial proper education on how to teach. And I've always been kind of an inquisitive mind. So I always like the why behind things. I'm that guy asking but why? And that kind of helped me get directed in the right, direction with the right mentality over developing a training program, if you will. Moved to a different department. But long story short is at some point along the way, I decided, hey, I wonder if I could just do this for a living, because I really enjoy teaching. Don't get me wrong. At the time, I really enjoyed law enforcement. Probably wouldn't do it now just because of the political nature of things. But anyway, I started Sage Dynamics, and I got to a point in my career where I had a decision to make. I was like, do I want to do this full time? Do I want to keep doing it on the side, on the weekends, things like that? And I decided to teach full time because I felt like that would be a much more efficient use of the time I had. It was something that I thought would be more fulfilling, but also more beneficial to the shooting public at large. If I could get out there and kind of the old cliche of if I could just touch one person, if I could just reach one guy, phrasing, of course. So I started teaching Sage full time. I did a little reserve law enforcement on the side, and then I just got to the point where I just threw myself 100% into it, recognized that part of my life was over, and now everything was going to be focused on developing education. And what really, I want to say put me on the map, but what really got people's attention is when I took a real hard look at the red dots on the handguns, right? So that's one of the things that I'm primarily known for is my training program around red dot handguns. And I went looking for a codified, collected information, and it just wasn't there. No one had sat down and said, here's all the good, here's all the bad, here's all the science, here's the reasoning, here's why it's going to be great, which was surprising to me because red dots had existed prior to putting them on the handgun. They've been around for a very long time on rifles. And everybody just kind of accepted, for the most part, except for the Luddites who are like, oh, nuclear EMPs and my optic's going to die when I'm living in the woods eating MREs. So those guys notwithstanding, there just wasn't anything. I think people just kind of took it for granted. But on the handgun, people were like, I don't know if it's really worth it. And my feeling on it was a little, I don't know what the right word would be. I guess just direct. I mean, like, well, iron sights have existed for 600 years, and things haven't really gotten any better. When we actually look at the statistics that are available for shooting, people don't shoot well in uses of force compared to how they do on paper. And people are like, oh, well, it's different because of the adrenaline and because of that. I'm like, yeah, but why, as training has improved, has the consistency of accuracy not improved with it? There's something going on there. There's some hurdle we can't get over. So that's what really appealed to me about the red dot, is because from a physiological standpoint, it removes steps from the process. It lets you fight more naturally. Going back to the lack of information, it just wasn't there, at least not collected for the gun enthusiast or the instructor or the law enforcement officer or whatever. So I just did it myself. It took me about 4 years to get everything put together, and that became the MRDS white paper for duty use, which has become a bit of a living document. And then on the YouTube side of things, I'm known for dropping things and testing optics and holding them to a completely subjective standard that people take way too personally. And people just show up for the violence. They're really there just to see me drop stuff. They don't care what I really have to say about it, because they're going to buy whatever they want anyway. And they get in their feelings about like how I don't like this optic or how I don't like that optic. And I don't know. But I've been teaching the Red Dot program based off of kind of the white paper research and also just continual experience. So at this point, over 1,000 instructors trained, which equates to over 10,000 officers on duty with red dots based on, at least in part, my program, training pipeline, concepts and principles being taught to them. Some of the guys I get that come to my class, instructors, they'd already been to SIG Academy, they've already been somewhere else, so I can't take complete credit, nor would I, because they're also instructors in their own right, so they're just going to take what they need and make it work for their agency. I do teach other stuff. I'm really passionate about low light, really passionate about active killer response, active shooter response. I do a program for that, but pretty much best known for the red dot thing, both teaching it, shooting it, dropping it.
Have you ever thought about doing a video where you don't talk and all you do is drop optics?
I actually have a dubstep mix of that. So I went into like all the red dot reviews I'd filmed. And there's also red dot drops that never made it into a YouTube video because I'm not a YouTuber. So there are optics that I evaluate that I never actually do videos on, which aggravates a lot of people. But long story short, I had because you're looking at any video review is going to have 4 drops, 1 every 500 rounds. So, 4 times however many videos, I had a lot of drops. And I kind of started playing around, bored one day, had them in the editor, I got a license account for music, like stock music. And I found a little dubsteppy tune, and I'm like, I wonder. Started mixing. I never finished it, though, but eventually I'll get around to, put it on Instagram or something like that. But that'd be about as close as I would come to that idea, is just watch this.
We get new optics in, and it never fails to amaze me that we'll put the new optic online, we'll post about it, and then the first comment is like, what does Aaron have to say about this? I'm like, we haven't sent him one yet, but yeah. I don't know. And so now it's almost been like, all right, have we ordered this yet? Has Aaron got a video on it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Has Aaron? Oh, he does have a video on it. Ooh, we should not order that. Order that.
Yeah. Just one man's opinion, of course. Yeah, it's interesting. I'll have people comment like, "Hey, have you tested this optic yet?" I'm like, "Dude, it's not even out yet. Like, you think these people just send me optics? I got optics companies that hate me. Like, so there's some optics there's some optics that like I buy 90% of the stuff I review, and I think that surprises a lot of people too. I try to remain as objective as possible. I definitely avoid any conflicts of interest and things like that, because I have people ask me about, what do you think about this rifle? And I'm like, it looks like a good gun, but I'm not going to review it. It'd be a conflict of interest for me. And I think people have just gotten so used to the idea of like consumer-based YouTubeism, where everything's great. and everything is awesome. Sell. And that's late stage capitalism, dark side of consumerism, where guys is like, no matter what it is, they'll shoot 20 rounds through it, and it's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the coin, you guys be like, well, it didn't really survive me dragging it down the road behind my truck, so I'm going to go ahead and have to give it a fail. So you end up with both sides of things, right? But I think if we could separate the ad copy from the actual true reviews, I think people would be a lot better off. But then you get people in their own feelings about like, well, I like it, so I'm going to buy it anyway. And I'm like,
you do you, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they don't understand the whole message. Like, I get that with the Trijicon SRO a lot. I wouldn't recommend it for duty. Originally, Trijicon didn't recommend it for duty. And guys are like, well, I carry it concealed. I'm like, that's fine. Then nobody said that was a bad idea. But
yeah, you hurt my feelings. I love the SRO.
I do too. That's the thing. I have one.
People think that he hates the SRO.
No, I don't hate the SRO. I just would not carry it in a duty capacity.
Outside the waistband, rolling around, getting crushed. There's
on a daily basis, like banging it up against a car door and putting hands on somebody on a daily basis. There's a difference between that and.
Like I get regular reports back from people who've been through my red dot instructor class, because I ask them, I was like, hey, if you have an in line of duty breakage, just tell me what the optic is and how it happened. Like, no big deal, no details, whatever. And there's optics I hear back from. One of the most common breakages I'm seeing over the past year is the optic is still in the holster, and the officer is fighting, or he goes down on his hip, or he gets pushed into something, and the optic is being broken while the gun is still holstered. And it doesn't happen a lot. It's not an epidemic, but it does happen to some brands and then not others. So, that information, anecdotal as it is, that's the best we're ever going to get is anecdotal information, at least when it comes to like line of duty breakages. Because you're not going to be able to recreate a lot of those situations, but there are some commonalities. Cops are going to get in fights, and they're going to be on fights in the ground. It's going to happen. So for me, if there's an optic that 5 or 6 times didn't make it, I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to choose that one. But just one man's opinion.
But you're making that not assumption. You're making that opinion based on evidence that you're receiving from multiple sources.
I'm trying to. I try to be as informative as possible. It's like my testing protocol. I try to just get it to cover the bases. And one of the most controversial parts of the testing protocol has always been the drop test. Not necessarily just the fact that I'm dropping the gun from shoulder height, but people are like, why are you doing it 4 times? And I'm like, because I got to have goalposts, man. And the whole reason behind the drop wasn't because I believe that people were going to drop their gun from shoulder height, although they do. There's 2 types of shooters in this world, the guys that have dropped their guns and the guys that are going to. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of how bad it is, from what height it is, circumstances, right? So my thinking behind it wasn't really to simulate the drop more than to simulate force. So force being delivered to the optic. So if I have an optic that can survive a shoulder height drop test, that might be the optic I would choose over one that couldn't. Not the only deciding factor, but pretty significant to me. And handguns are violent anyway. You think of just how many G's that optic is going to taste on a handgun versus what it takes. I mean, those tiny guns can generate 75, 100 G's. That's why the big optic companies, like when I went and took a tour of SIG, they do a lot of their testing on, or actually all their handgun optic testing is done on 10 millimeter. And they just have poor, I don't know if they're interns, just shooting into bullet traps. And I'm like, you guys can't build these poor guys a machine to do that?
Sounds like arthritis.
Like, I think the machine would be cheaper in the long run.
Yeah, because I'm thinking workman's comp. Like, after a while, I'll be like, repetitive motion injury.
And loading all those mags, that would fucking suck.
Well, and I've seen some other companies where they had like a machine that was almost like a paint shaker.
Yeah.
And there'd been some engineer, some pocket protector arguments. Well, actually, that's not really going to replicate the exact recoil of the gun because of this, because of that. So the SIG's like, we'll just do it live.
Cool. We got ammo.
We got some 10 mils. We make ammo. We make 10 millimeter handguns. We'll put 2 and 2 together. And some poor, I don't know. Again, don't know if these guys are interns or what the deal is, but they're out there just
imagine that job interview. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you're going to shoot 10 millimeter all day long.
Well, like FN, they have a lady that works at FN for the past 30 years. Her whole job's been loading magazines, and she loves her job. I talked to her. I was like, so you just load magazines? She's got loading. Oh. Like, they had this. It was made out of wood, and it looked really old. Like, because she'd been working there for 30 years, right? So somebody had made her a jig to load the mags, and she'd been using it. And she loads 30-round mags for all their full auto QC testing. So she's in like 66 pairs of hearing protection, 3 pairs of goggles, respirator, and she's in there just loading mags. Like,
Kids paid $35 an hour. After
probably, yeah. And she's got great benefits.
Yeah.
You know?
She's a vice president.
Yeah.
Vice president of mag loading operations.
I'm gonna go find that job on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And see what it.
I imagine she'll get around to retiring at some point.
There's an opening. There you go.
Yeah, someday.
It's like those old ladies that dip the freaking Maker's Mark bottles.
Yeah.
There's only like 2 of them. You can tell which one did it by how long the little things of wax on the bottle are.
Really?
I did not know that. That's wild.
Yeah, those are all done by hand.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the people have been doing this. They've been doing it for years. So you can actually tell who did it if you look at them.
That's Martha. Yeah, Martha was off that day, actually. That's Cynthia. She did that. So also, and Duffy brought this up earlier when he was talking about your active shooter response class. So what classes are you teaching out here for one, this time at Shooters? And then talk to us a little bit about the active shooter response class.
So this year, almost everybody else was teaching rifle stuff. So I was like, I'll do red dot handgun. So I did a 1-day module. And what I did is I took my red dot defensive handgun, which is like my entry-level red dot class for open enrollment. I took a couple blocks from day 1, a couple blocks from day 2, put them together. I think that's going to be most useful for the students. So I taught that yesterday. Tonight, me and Duff are teaming up to do a low-light handgun, which is red dot focused, but you don't have to have a red dot. And then tomorrow I'm doing another version of the 1-day red dot handgun. I've done, like last year I did a bunch of force on force. I've done force on force here. Actually, this is the first year I haven't done it. And mainly the reason being weather's unpredictable, training site's unpredictable. So, I told the ranch, once you got, because they're going to build a force on force shoot house. And once it's built, then I'll come here every year, a happy boy, and just teach force on force, force on force, force on force, because that's like the biggest missing part that a lot of people have in their training is they've shot paper. Paper is always going to be unrealistic. It just is. We can't even get everyone to shoot 3-dimensional targets. Like 3-dimensional targets on a square live fire range are almost unheard of. People don't do it, but people have always been 3-dimensional. But the targets we choose usually are very arbitrary in nature. They may be humanoid in appearance. They may give you a good eye shape, but they always give you ideal presentation. And yeah, you can like put a piece of cover, cardboard in front of them or something like that, but it doesn't really replicate a real person. And that's always been not always, because I had to be educated as well. Like, oh yeah, you can hit an NRA B-27, but what about like a 145-pound man who's crouching behind a trash can and he's only got one arm pointed at you with a gun? You're like, well, that'd be kind of hard to hit. I'm like, well, there you go. You can shoot him through the trash can,
yeah.
hopefully. With force on force, you get the ability, even though it's still a little bit unrealistic, there's still that artificiality of the guy knows something is going to happen.
Right.
He shows up to a class, it's in the name, active shooter response. So he's like, I'm probably going to encounter that. So he knows something's going to happen, and that kind of primes his level of violence or primes his level of behavior. That's unavoidable. We just have to kind of work in that program. Other force on force classes, you can set up judgment type situations where it may be a shoot scenario, it may be a no-shoot scenario, and it may go either way based on how you handle it. And I'm a big fan of the ambiguous ones. Like, you can talk yourself into or out of a gunfight, because people's verbal skills are something that's not sexy. And it's things that aren't sexy don't get practiced. And that's not just firearms training. That's not just like everyday carry type people. That's cops. That's everybody. Verbals are probably one of the most overlooked skill sets that people have, but it's like, how do you practice it, right? And make it like yelling at cardboard, that ain't gonna work. So force on force is a good solution if it's set up right, if it's done right. But the problem with that is the helmets, the safety gear. So you're like, and the other guy's like, so nobody's hearing what anybody's saying.
And that one surprise iteration of this is an active shooter class, but you didn't know it was an active shooter class, that never ends up working out.
No,
well
you shouldn't. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that, unless it's going to be a strict no shoot, like you're just running secure blanks or something like that. And I've been in exercises like that where the actual violence was simulated, but the whole intent was taken. But then you can't control what people are going to do when they think something is real. So then you have another safety issue.
Yeah, that's what I was meaning.
Because I was involved in one of those a number of years ago. We assisted with a school system setting something like that up, and one of the role players got hit with a chair, and It was like a grand slam.
That's
Fucking
good.
WWE
Part of the violence.
SmackDown
I like
shit.
it.
That guy got wrecked. Like he was
Nice.
he was not okay. And they're like, we didn't think that would happen. I was like, yeah, why not?
Isn't that what you want them to do?
Yeah, exactly.
that's
So
some
I was like, that dude
realistic
gets an A. Like the guy got hit, he gets an A. just for safety's sake. But the way that I put my active shooter program together was coming from a semi-rural law enforcement background. I thought about right after Fort Hood, we got a lot of our instructors. We sent them to Alert in Texas, which is like it's religion down here. Alert is, and at the time, Alert did not have a single officer response module. And I remember asking one of the instructors, "Hey, what do I do if it's just me and my backup is like 20 minutes out? Do I just tactically loiter, or like what's my plan here?" Because their program at the time was 2 to 4 to 5, building onto that. And he's like, "Well, you got to have 2 officers." He's like, "If you got to go in, you got to go in, but we don't advise it." And that was at the time. Now they do have a single officer program. I went back to my host agency and said, this stuff's cool, but it's unrealistic for us. Because even if I have backup 2 minutes away, that's 2 minutes away. And I am not going to wait. If I hear active killing taking place, I'm going in. Everything else we did in law enforcement was alone. It starts that way anyway. So why should this be any different? And then I look at the statistics of it, how many stops had been done inadvertently by one person. And usually, when they encounter law enforcement, they either self-terminate or they try to surrender or they try to flee. So it's like, well, the risk is wait for another officer and more people get hurt or go in. And I built the single officer program off of that concept of backup is coming. And the way that I run the class, you do get your backup. So you'll go into a scenario and then I'll grab another guy in the class and be like, all right, 2 minutes and 30 seconds, go ahead and start a timer, you go in. And sometimes they can communicate and sometimes they can't, because that's realistic too. Officers from different agencies showing up.
Oh, yeah.
Post 9/11, all our radios were supposed to communicate with each other magically somehow, and it just never happened.
Fact.
Now, some agencies, they do better than others, but I mean, we had a local sheriff's department. We could hear them, like on my personal handheld, I could hear them, I could monitor them, but I couldn't talk to them. So I'd mainly just like text the guy. That would work. And then from that program, the the Citizens Response to Active Shooter program was born. And you've been through that. And it was basically thinking like, well, who's the common denominator in all these active shooter events? Well, everybody. So I wanted to develop a program for CCWs, for everyday people, where they could get the reps, the experience of carrying a gun, and dealing with the very atypical situation. Because in a self-defense shooting, a general self-defense shooting, it's either personal or it's profit-based. And there's exceptions, of course. But for the most part, it's either going to be some kind of crime, is like, give me your money, or it's, I don't like John from The Office. But an active shooter event, it's, I'm just here to kill people, maybe not you specifically, but if you're there, then you're there. So in that situation, the active shooter's profit is violence. So there's no reasoning with them. Your approach to verbal commands should be different. I'm not big on talking to active shooters. They tell you, well, you should teach them to escalate the program. And I'm like, nah, even with
they're
cops,
already actively killing. Like,
they're already actively killing. I'm not trying to communicate with this guy. Yeah. I'm literally just going to shoot him.
I believe alert too. Once they start talking, you're supposed to stop. You don't go in, anything like that, unless they're counting down.
Yeah, because it could become like a barricaded suspect hostage situation. So you're supposed to recognize that. But my feeling is like, there's some nuance there, though. There is definitely some nuance there. Because some people talk their way into a position of advantage, and then they go right back to what they were doing. But you got to be qualified or feel comfortable making that decision. And I'm not like the SWAT god. Like, I spent time on a SWAT team, but I don't teach a lot of SWAT-based stuff. I took stuff from my SWAT experience and helped me augment some of the other stuff I teach, but that's not my lane. So if you want to learn like team-based assaults, I'm not your guy. But if you want to learn how to search a structure, because you can't clear a structure by yourself, but if you want to learn how to search a structure by yourself, I can help you with that. I'm just big on the realities of you're going to be by yourself, at least for a little while. So here's some things you can do. And sometimes people are like, well, is that realistic? I'm like, well, what's the alternative? If you're already there, the alternative is to do nothing. Or to just guess at best practices instead of having at least some kind of training confidence built in. And my hope is that a student would recognize, I've seen something like this, I've been through training similar to this, here's some decisions that I can make. And sometimes the biggest thing you can do is help evaluate people. There was a shooter in Fallon, Nevada, this was probably about 10 years ago now. Active shooter came into an IHOP and started shooting at members of, I think it was Air National Guard. So he starts shooting at them, and there was a guy in there, CCW. He was carrying a 1911, but he didn't have a spare magazine. And he had, 7 rounds, 8 rounds of I hope this works. So what he did, instead of pulling the gun and engaging the shooter, is he helped evacuate who he could. He got his gun out and helped protect those people as he was getting them out. And some people are like, I can't believe he went and didn't go and engage the shooter. And I'm kind of like, I think he did the best he could, You think about some of the other situations like the Vegas shooting. Even if you'd had a rifle, what would you have done? You're not taking shots.
50 stories up.
Not realistically, no.
Yeah.
And of course, tinfoil hat aside, there have been plenty of shooting situations where if you don't carry a larger gun, considerable amount of ammunition, sometimes a better choice is help render medical aid, help people escape, get them to a place where you can deny the shooter access to them. And that's kind of how I teach my program is confront them or deny them access. And you can come up with a cool little, acronym, CDI, confront, deny, incapacitate. Because everybody needs their own acronym. That's really important to set you apart from everybody else. But I wanted to simplify the program like that. As long as you do one of those 3 things, you're successful. You may not be as successful if you don't stop the shooter, but at least you saved lives that otherwise might not have been saved. And sometimes that's a hard decision to make. And I don't think you're ever going to get that level of emotional training on a square range, shooting at paper. Even if you got like a Rescue Randy dummy and you got to drag them away from the targets, it's not the same thing. So I think everybody should, even if it's not active shooter response, everybody needs to, once they feel comfortable live fire training, taking 3, 4, 5, however many classes, they need to seek out some good force on force and kind of put their skills to the test, because that's one of the biggest things of it. Is it not only is it good training, but it's skill validation. It has what you've been doing. Is it working? Is it going to work? Is it something you can perform under pressure, under stress, things like that?
Yeah, having gone through alerts class, that's the one thing that throws everybody off is, they got someone in there yelling like, I'm gonna cut this guy's dick off and stick it in this guy's mouth and just yelling crazy stuff, and people are like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
Yeah,
I think that escalated quickly.
Well, and it's like I think people get comfortable with the sanitary nature of violence, the very sterile nature of violence in the shooting of targets. Like the guns themselves are very violent, controlled explosions, everything like that. It's loud. We got to wear ear pro and eye pro, but we're not actually simulating any of the other violence. Like, we're just shooting paper. And even if you're running around doing push-ups, whatever, or some guy's screaming at you, kicking dirt at you, that's not a thing.
You're just getting dirty.
But then you get into force on force, and you get a really good role player, and he's like, I got snakes in my brain. And you're like, what is going on? So if you and the role players make or break a training program.
Oh, yeah.
So I've got some alumni that are really, really good role players.
Miami Mafia.
Chris Floyd.
Oh, yeah.
Local to you. Chris Floyd's always been a good role player. He plays a great crazy person.
He is a great crazy person.
And you're able to just kind of, if you have good role players, you're able to give them like, okay, you can do this, but you can't do this. So you give them a range, and then you just set them off. And that's much better than trying to script every single step, because you can't.
Yeah, cause if you don't script it, you never know what's going to happen. We had one where it's like 2 guys blocking the doorway, and the guy tried to linebacker his way in and let a round off in the hall and shot there's a girl in the hallway filming it, and she got hit.
Yep. I had a cameraman get shot one time. I told him, I was like, hey, man, no sudden movements.
Yeah.
Right? As you can film, I'm cool with it. You need to stay back. No sudden movements. So we're filming, we're using the inside of this building. The power's turned off. So the only light we have is from the exterior windows. And he just happened to be all up in a shadow with his like $3,000 Canon lens. And he just does like a boop, boop, peekaboo. And like the guy's like, and just burns it down. And I was like, dude, what did I tell you? No sudden movements. If they broke my camera. I was like, no, you broke your camera.
No sudden moves.
Yeah, I told him, I was like, just wherever you think the action is going to take place, just be there and don't move. Just film. Just take pictures, whatever you're doing. Instead, he's like doing this peekaboo because he didn't want to get hit, and that's what got him hit. Is that sudden? Because he's like, I just saw a guy with a gun. I'm like, yeah, it's funny how that happens. That cognitive interpolation will get you every time. And like with the predictability of it, I used to set up like GoPros. Like, okay, the fight will probably happen right around, and I always miss it. And then you put the GoPro on students, and that helps a little bit. But it's really hard to capture, because what I was trying to do is just capture how things were going down, so you had to compare and contrast over what people assumed was going to happen versus what actually happens.
Yeah.
But there's always that artificiality, especially in that type of class. Guys know something is going to happen, and that does obviously affect the training outcome.
Yeah. And you also know that it's sims.
Yeah.
Like, there's a big difference between sims and what you would actually do when
I think people will take bigger risks. They really will. But I think the physiological aspect of it is very close to the real thing. So if nothing else, they're getting to see how they perform under that stress that everybody talks about. Having been in the real thing and having done thousands of force-on-force evolutions, it's close.
Yeah.
It's not exactly the same. I had an instructor tell me one time, he's like, well, you're not going to have your fear of death. And I was like, I don't know, man. I've had people try to kill me, and I wasn't really afraid to die until after it was over.
Yeah.
I was like, whew, I almost died. But every person's going to be obviously a little bit different in the way that they cope with things. I've seen some people that were stone cold sociopaths when it came to force on force. They were able to game it because it just didn't affect them. And I'm like, huh. And then other people, you literally have to show them video of themselves doing something completely irrational because they don't believe they did it.
Yeah.
I had a guy in a class one time that every time he came out of the holster, he would take his support side hand and grab the slide of the gun as he fired. And to this day, I have no idea why he was doing it. And I asked him, and I tried to figure it out. Did you carry revolvers? Have you been through a lot of weapon retention training, anything like that? And he swore to God the gun just kept malfunctioning. He didn't realize he was causing it. And I had to show him the video of him doing it. And he's like, I have no idea why I'm doing that. Huh. And he's like, I don't train to do anything like none of that makes sense to me. So sometimes people make strange decisions, and that in itself is kind of a learning episode. If I had my way, and if it was realistic, force on force class, you'd show up, and I'd just give you your safety gear and your gun, and be like, all right, put all that on. 2 weeks from now, at some point, your scenario will start. So some dude would be at home, brushing his teeth underneath the mask, and a role player jump out of the closet with a knife. That would be the closest you get it to realism. But what I found in some classes, if you leave guys alone, if you're like, hey, I want you guys, this is a restaurant, y'all sit down, y'all start talking, and you give them a topic. If you let it roll 3, 4, 5 minutes, some guys actually start to forget what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, yeah. Another thing I do to students, I'm like, hey, man, get out your phone. I need you to find me the gross domestic product for Thailand, for Laos, and for Vietnam, 1979. And he'll actually start reading. It's like, oh, I didn't know anything about this. And he'll get lost in the data, and then oh, a guy with a gun. So I try to find ways to break their attention, and I've had some success with it, I think. I think the students come away from the class with a sobering experience. Yeah. Not just in the active shooter class, but in all my force-on-force stuff. I think the low light one is a big eye opener. The home defense one is a big eye opener. Because there's what we have in our head, but you got to test it. So some guys the home defense one is always interesting to me because I tell guys, if you have a shotgun, if that's your go-to, if a rifle is your go-to, if a handgun's your go-to, just bring whatever you bring, and we can convert it. And they'll do their first scenario with the rifle, and then after that it's handgun, 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 because they realize just how complicated it is to maneuver a rifle inside a house. Mm-hmm. Especially for people who have small kids. I'm like, hey, we'll simulate the child.
That's a two-hand gun,
Yeah. Even if you got good upper body strength, an 11-inch gun, nah, you ain't one-handing that, not for very long anyway. And we'll simulate the child with a CPR dummy or just a bag of flour, whatever. And they got to go scoop up a kid and run a gun. And they're like, the handgun. I'm like, yeah, handgun's probably better for that. Everybody's a little bit different, of course, based on their experience. Like me, I don't have any kids, so rifle all day long, but my rifle is probably not in reach at 10:30 in the morning, and I don't think a lot of people think about that either. What happens if somebody does a home invasion at 9 a.m.? Where's the rifle?
Yeah.
So
on this note, we need to get him up for one of the scenario-based training episodes.
Put him in the warehouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can count me in. I'll come take it. That sounds like fun.
Yeah, for sure. We
always a good time.
Definitely.
We do a workplace violence one.
Hey, Ian, fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck you, no, fuck you.
What's your name? But we kind of skipped over our guest host over here.
Aaron's just so damn interesting. I'll just sit here and listen to him the whole time.
And the cool part is
I'm thorough.
Yeah, thorough. He's got a white paper on a white paper.
Yeah.
On writing a white paper.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Well, he's an author.
Yeah, but so you have like 5 books out now or something, don't you?
7.
So, yeah, I was going to say.
Damn.
Well, it's 2 different series. One of them I've been writing for a long time. It's more of a plausible thriller fiction. So it's not really sci-fi, but there's little sci-fi elements in it. And then I just recently started a series that's hard science fiction, which takes place far, far in the future. That's my thing. Like, don't get me wrong, I love teaching. I'm very passionate about it. But if I got approached tomorrow by Putnam House and say, hey, we want to give you an advanced 6-book deal, I'd be like, peace out, Sage Dynamics. I'm gonna write books for a living.
That's cool.
That's always been.
I didn't know that.
That's always been my biggest passion, is just writing. You know, and I've been writing since I was a kid, but breaking into publishing is incredibly hard if you're not a Navy SEAL. So if you're trying to write fiction, and the problem with science fiction is like wine. You walk in there and you're like, it all kind of looks good, and then you're like, no, tastes terrible. But there's so many different science fiction writers, and publishers will just kind of mass produce that. So almost like Pulp Fiction back in the day. So I occasionally still approach publishers, agents. You got to get an agent. That's the best way to do it. And I've been after this guy named Aaron Priest forever because he represents all the big guys. And I'm like, I could be a big guy. But other than that, like, you can self-publish through Amazon. And, you know, even though Jeff Bezos is our world's only current supervillain, Amazon really allows you to kind of promote yourself. You don't make much money off of it, but you're able to get your books out there. You're able to actually reach out and reach an audience, and people are able to buy the book either electronically or they're able to get like a paperback or a hard copy.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do that without like the Amazon publishing. There's just no way. Because I looked into self-publishing. It's ridiculously expensive.
That's cool.
I did not know that.
Yeah. I didn't realize you can just make a book and put it on Amazon.
Yeah. Oh, there's some trash on there, but there's also a lot of good stuff. Like me, when I read, I try to do nonfiction, fiction. What I've started doing for probably the past 2 years now is I only buy Amazon self-published fiction, with exception. Every now and then, like, a new book will come out from an author I've been reading for years, and I'll grab that. But other than that, I'm reading books from, like, people just like me, just to, you know, show my support, I guess. And a lot of them are really good. And a lot of it's non-traditional. You definitely get an idea of how the traditional publishing pipeline kind of shapes books to fit a very specific mold. So, like, if you read a self-published thriller, I find it to be way more colorful of a book than something from Putnam or something from one of the other, like a Robert Krause book or a P.T. Dutterman book. It's just like this random guy who wrote on the weekends, and his thriller is way more entertaining to me.
That's cool.
Some of the horror, like the Stephen King-esque stuff, it's not nearly as neat and controlled and packaged up. So I like that. They're breaking the mold a little bit.
There's an app called Goodreads or something like that where it's just online where people can, I guess, write on there. And I started reading one of those. I was like, man, like 500 pages in, it just kept going. I was like, fast forward to the end, like 2,000 pages. Like, nope.
Oh, not even. I write a long book, but
yeah, Fortunate Son's like 700, I think.
It's like there's got to be
depending on the format.
Point.
Yeah, it's long. It's long. Well, I had to build a world, and with sci-fi,
yeah, there's a lot going on.
You got to build. I got this huge grand, it's almost like a space opera, this huge grand idea in my head, and it's all based on an ethical question. The whole series is based on the ethical question of how would humans treat another intelligent species? Because we've never encountered that. We've never had to
I'm not even sure we qualify.
Exactly. So, and I didn't want to do the alien thing because that's just been done, right? I know how we treat aliens. We would invade immediately. That's just humanity. I'm like, there was just like this funny question that was put to me a long time ago. It was like, why are we looking for aliens? We can't even get along with other humans.
Yeah.
Right? But the idea was like, how would humans treat something they created that ended up being intelligent? Like, that was literally smarter than them. Like, infinitely smarter than them. Would they attack it? Would they try to enslave it? And that's pretty much going to be the arc of the entire series, is dealing with a totally different species that we created.
I know what's next on my reading list then.
Fortunate
Here
Son.
we go.
And the whole Rushing series.
The new Rushing book will be out in January, and there'll be 2 more after that. There was always originally going to be 9. This will be book number 7.
Cool.
I got 2 more after that, which I still enjoy writing that series. I love that character a lot, but it's definitely not a character that, like, he's got to get his happy ending or his ending. I can't foresee, like, some authors, they'll write the same character for 50, 60 books. I don't know how they do it. I just don't.
That's a big expanse of imagination and creativity.
I just couldn't put it. I don't know if I could put it down on paper. Like I'm just so busy. Like there's no way I could find time to write like that. Like I barely find time to do all my work.
I have trouble coming up with the next thing to come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
I just wrote, while I was waiting, I was over there in the chair. I wrote about 6 paragraphs.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's cool.
I try to write at least a page a day, but that's the Tom Clancy method. He would write a page a day. And I sometimes can knock out a chapter or 2 chapters a day, depending on what I got going on. So while I was waiting to come over here and hang out with you guys, I was like, let me knock out the end of this chapter real quick and get it sent off to Tyler Riddle, because Tyler Riddle's like my my tempo reader. He gets all the raw stuff and gives me feedback on it. So he's super excited about the second book and the Fortunate Son series.
It's interesting. Super interesting.
Like, how many books are you at this year so far?
I think I'm working on 46,
Nice.
45.
That's pretty good for October.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think I've read about the equivalent on Wikipedia, but
How tall was Jesus? That's me at 2 a.m.
When you can't
Rabbit
sleep and you're just
holes.
like,
What
what should I look up on the internet?
should I find here? Oh, that looks cool. Oh, I want those. Okay, I can't afford that.
Oh,
Come
I've
on.
definitely bought stuff on Gunbroker at like 3 a.m.
Oh, yeah.
dude, Symposium 2 years ago, I bought a car on an app.
I
called
remember.
Zoom.
Yeah, you remember you telling me about that.
Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna need insurance on a BMW. And it's like, what the hell? And I'm like, I don't know. I got drunk and bought a car. Makes sense.
Hate when that happens.
It happens all the time. So since we got you two at the table, and for our listeners that don't know who you are, Kyle, please give me just a
He's
little
kind of a
snippet.
big deal.
He is
He
kind of a.
is definitely.
I stay in the shadows, though. So I'm one of the co-owners of Sons of Liberty Gunworks, Mike's partner, and we've been around since 2014. Me and Mike have only been getting along since like 2018. Just kidding. We almost killed each other the first couple of years. We're very, very different people. But I run the shop. I do a lot of the day-to-day stuff, product design, that sort of thing. Those of y'all who have been to the shop know that we've always been near a lumber yard, because that was my family's business, so I do that too. And that was always the thing, is we went from, they're like, oh, y'all moved. I'm like, yeah, just to another lumber yard across town. We're still there. Dodge the trucks, and all our employees are always getting mad. They're getting nails in their tires and shit. I'm like, don't run shit over. You're not supposed to. But yeah, that's basically it, man. We run Sons of Liberty. We make awesome guns. One of our best models here is a Sage Dynamics we do with Aaron, and he was actually, I think, our first pro staffer, I think.
Oh yeah.
Back in the day, yeah, we started talking about it at Symposium, maybe the first Symposium. I don't
First
even
or
remember.
second.
Yeah. It's been a while, so it's always a very successful one. We're about to do another run of them here soon in the next month or so.
Very cool.
Yeah, we're always trying to come up with new shit.
How did that collaboration start, and what was the progression of it? Like, were you just like, I want to build a gun. Do you want to build a gun? Let's build a gun.
We kind of realized we needed some pro staff. That's kind of like, once you get to a certain size, you got to have some guys on staff, and now we got a whole team of great guys. And we started talking to Aaron, and we always got along with Aaron, and he wasn't happy where he was at, and we were like, we think we can do this better. We think we can sell more guns, and we started talking about how we would do it. The barrel length, the colors. How we would get it put together. And that first run we did, people just loved it. I mean, that OD grain with the FDE, it's the only 12.5, currently the only 12.5-inch factory gun we do. So if you want a 12.5-inch Sons of Liberty, it's got to be a Sage Dynamics gun. And it's just been killing it since. I mean, we make hundreds of them every year, and they sell out like crazy. So we started, I think, just with y'all and Palm Beach Tactical, the only ones carrying them, and then kind of, it's also the only I don't know what you would call them, specialty gun, exclusive gun that we do that goes to pretty much all our dealers. Anybody can pick it up. So it's been very successful. I've got dealers out there like, I want 5 of this, 3 of that, 2 of this, 1 of this, and 98 Sage guns. We're like, that's not going to happen.
We try.
It's not how this works. It's not how any of this works.
We try. It's definitely a fantastic seller.
It's a good
whenever we get a good gun.
We started the two-tone thing for sure.
Oh yeah, it's been knocked off by a bunch of people, but ours is still the best.
I mean, we weren't the first ones to do it, I guess, but we did it.
You made it popular.
Yeah, we made it popular because I already had the two-tone handgun. That's where I got the idea.
Yeah.
Agency Arms did. It was actually my wedding gift from them. It was a two-tone Glock 19X, which was the prototype for the Sage gun that I do through Agency Arms. And it was two-tone, and I didn't even ask them to do that. I'm like, I like OD green, and they're like, you like desert tan? I'm like, I like a little desert tan. Here we go. And then they did the two-tone, and that's what got me the idea for the rifle. I was like, let me compliment them. And then, I don't know if anybody's been knocking it off, but they definitely have been.
Not going to mention any names.
Yeah.
So we sold one, and this is one of those funny customer stories, that we sold one, sent it out, and then get a customer complaint because it's not a Sons of Liberty gun. Because Loyal 9 lower.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
This isn't safe. This is Sons of Liberty gun. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that's our legal LLC name is Loyal 9 Manufacturing.
It is. Well, y'all sold me the wrong gun. Y'all shipped me the. No. Because those words shipped me the wrong gun. This everything stops at the warehouse. Like, it's like the light goes off. The people are calling, and I'm like, "What's going on?" Josh is like, "I didn't do it. It's the right gun." You know, and
check the serial number. No, that's the right gun.
That's the right gun. And he's like, "I don't want it." I was like, "Somebody else will."
Yeah,
that's just crazy.
Somebody else will just send it back.
We changed it at one point when we changed the legal names. We're like, well, we have the side of the guns that always said Sons of Liberty, and almost all of them say that except for Loyal 9, because when we're doing law enforcement work, we've had chiefs from random departments be like, "What is this, a motorcycle gang? We can't buy these." like the fuck no. So just that L9 lower says Loyal 9 Manufacturer on the side, just to avoid that. We have certain bigger departments too. They're like, yeah, we can't have guys running around with that on the side. I mean, you know what the real Sons of Liberty did? I mean, they're hanging people from trees and shit. Like,
that's how we got
started.
We got this.
Burning the governor's mansion down. Like, yeah, we can't do that. And we're like, we'll change it just on that one.
Yeah.
And then, we had a bunch of people at the beginning who were like, what the hell is this? Is this some, because Colt did that for a while. They had like another line that was made by somebody else that was like Colt something or other, Sporting Arms, whatever it was for a while. And they're like,
yep.
Is this made by other people in another state? Like, what the hell's going on? And we're like, no, calm down. The cool thing with the Sage gun too is there's a bunch of cool people that have them that they're like, they see them like, we want one. Like Trump Jr., I think his gun is a Sage. Frickin' Ozzy Osbourne's son Jack has a Sage.
Jack's got one.
Yeah, there's a bunch of really cool people that are like, I want one of those. So there's a bunch of
Definitely a good looking gun.
Yeah.
Ike wants one of those.
He just sells them all. He can't even. It's like I don't have one. Like,
yet.
We got to sell them all. We'll do it. Like,
I think Mike bought one the other day. Like, he was at an armorer's course and we had one on the wall. It's like, I'm gonna buy that. I'm like, bro, like, you know how to get one, right? He's like, yeah, but we sell them so fast. So I'm just gonna go ahead and buy one.
Yeah.
That's how it always ends up with the exclusive guns. It's like, we got 2 left, and then like Jack Osborne wants one. We're like, all right, let him have it. And it was like, we don't get to keep one. I was like, all my guns are all sorts of random stuff. I don't think I have any of the Pro Staff guns. I mean, I want them. I want that. I want a Veil, and I just one of Chuck's guns. And
yeah, I bought the Veil
one day-
rifle, but I don't have Chuck's gun. Wasn't able to get one. And then I'd be like, and I go all the way back to the original. I bought one of the Lone Star editions for you guys, and that's kind of how the relationship with Mike started. That's how I got introduced to Mike, because I just bought one of your guns to do a review on before I even knew before I knew you guys.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's kind of how the conversation got going. And I was really impressed. I still shoot that gun a lot. Still use it quite a bit. It's one of my night vision guns. And then that's when I met you guys here at Symposium.
Yeah, that's
and we
right.
actually started talking about it, because I wanted to align myself, especially given the political situation at that time and how it hasn't gotten any better. I wanted to align myself with a gun company that was more proactive in Second Amendment rights. And I was coming from a great company, still have a really good relationship with them, but they were just a little too corporate. They were a little too, like a lot of gun companies are, if we're honest.
Oh, yeah.
They'll donate to the NRA because that's just what everyone always does, and the NRA just ships out knives and gym bags.
Waiting up here.
Yeah, I'm like, what would you say you do here?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing with our money? You're posting memes and taking credit for stuff you didn't do. So I wanted a company who's like, well, like Mike showed up late to SHOT Show because he had to go to Virginia.
Yep.
He's out there. That's the kind of, because I get involved. I wanted to work with a company that got involved, that wasn't afraid, no matter their size, no matter their scale, to actually represent the Second Amendment, represent people that recommend the Second Amendment. So I don't want to say like a working man's representation, but a passionate involvement in the industry. And that's the problem that we have sometimes is firearms has become more of an industry than it has a culture. And I definitely don't get that from the Sons guys, don't get that from the agency guys. So I'm really picky with alignments, because some of these companies, they mean well, they may pay well, but they're not going to be there. They're definitely not going to be there.
Yeah, we've always tried to maintain like a culture, like we have a cult around us versus a fan base and tried to stay out of being too corporate. I mean, once you start getting bigger, it gets more difficult, obviously, but I think we've threaded that needle pretty well. You know, we've got some great guys. We got a lot of crazy stuff that happens at the shop, and, you know, at a certain point, you know, certain things happen. We're like, yeah, you can't, you know, we allow a lot of stuff. We got a bar at the shop, you know, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Put the dog down.
Yeah, if y'all want to have a, you know, we had those big black suction cup dildos in the shop, and they're doing like a contest, like trying to throw them down the hallway and stick them to the floor. I'm like, that's okay. You know, like this other crazy thing you did over here, you can't do that.
That's not okay.
there's a line.
I have a whole folder on my computer dedicated to stickers that are really cool, but we cannot print.
Yeah.
They're there. They're out there.
We've made up some shirt ideas, and we're like, yeah, we can't. I mean, then again, like I swear, everybody copied it. We're the ones that came up with the Trump "fuck your feelings" thing. Like we did it, I think, like in 2015 when he first started running. But we were so small, you know, maybe sold like 200 of them or something like that. I'm like, I swear, I never saw that anywhere else before we started doing it. Now it's everywhere. Everybody says it, and I was like, I swear to God, like we made that up. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone else did it before us, but I don't think so.
So what do you got coming up? What's next for Sage Dynamics?
I mean, classes. I'm going straight from here. I leave here. I teach tonight, teach tomorrow, and then I drive to San Antonio, do a class in San Antonio. Going into, and this is kind of a personal decision on my part, and I don't really publicize for pats on the back like the way that I teach, because there is a big divide in some communities between your average Second Amendment supporting gun owner and the concept of law enforcement. So a lot of guys get upset when things are law enforcement only, or they're like, why are you teaching in California? Because they're super restrictive. And I'm very picky by agency who I will teach. There's whole states I won't teach classes in, or at least, you know, based on the relationships or based on their previous, like Maryland's a good example. But with everything getting re-evaluated now in regards to Burren, like, Maryland's wide open. CCW shall be issued. So that changes kind of the approach to things. But what I want to do, especially going into next year, is minimize how many classes are not open to qualified individuals. So I've started telling a lot of these agencies when they contact me, the range has to allow qualified non-law enforcement to take the class. Otherwise, I'm not coming. Because anytime you see a class of mine that's LE only, that's not my call. Because I don't believe there's anything I'm going to teach a cop that the average gun-carrying individual doesn't deserve to know, doesn't deserve to learn, even if it's going to be completely academic knowledge for him. And I'm not trying to do that to say that law enforcement doesn't deserve some kind of exclusivity with certain concepts and principles, but with what I'm teaching, like, it's not explosive breaching. So I don't really see the exclusivity as being a thing. I think we need to get back to, and this is just more of a philosophy of me having been a cop, we need to get back to an environment in this country where the professional law enforcement is a duty. It's not an exclusivity. It's not a closed club of superiority over others. There should be common ground between responsible gun owners, responsible police officers. That way we can actually talk to each other versus talking past each other, and help repair some of the public perception that has taken place. And again, some guys, especially law enforcement guys, are going to disagree with that, and that's fine because they have no control over what I'm doing. And that's kind of the point. If they have a problem with it, the question would be why? Mm-hmm. Why does that bother you? You know, why is it not okay for non-law enforcement to take this class with you if they're qualified to take it? Because there's plenty of instructors out there that aren't cops, and they teach great. Some of the best classes I've ever had come from people who were never military and had never been law enforcement. They're just really good at shooting. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they'll bring up, well, you know, our range doesn't allow civilians. I'm like, you're a civilian. What are you talking about? Or, well, you know, we don't allow non-law enforcement. I mean, why? Well, our insurance, blah, 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 and they just kind of trail off. They don't actually have a thing. And I'm like, that's weird because all these other agencies that I work with, like one of the agencies I teach habitually, I teach at least twice a year, San Mateo, California, very pro Second Amendment sheriff out there, and the range is open to the public. And I'm like, if I can have a range 10 minutes from San Francisco that is open to the public, you guys at you know, X town in Texas or X town in Indiana can do the same thing. You just don't want to, or you just never have. Mm-hmm. So either you open it up to where I can allow in qualified non-law enforcement individuals, or I'm not coming. So that's my big political thing that I'll be doing. But more than that, I'm just going to keep teaching. You know, I got my core competency. I love teaching the red dot instructor class. I love teaching the low light instructor class, and I love teaching force on force. This year, coming year, I'm spinning up a class called Opposed, which is 3 days of force on force for people who have force on force experience.
Nice.
And this class separates itself from some of the other classes I teach in that it's not scenario based. You're not going there to simulate a mugging or simulate a carjacking. You're going there to increasingly encounter more and more difficult opponents. So it'll start out like on easy mode, and by day 3, it's like turn to 11.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Like motherfucker 2.0.
Yep. That's basically, I have a specific standard that takes place on day 3, not giving away a lot, but it's called the metal detector, like METTELE. And you basically go from it's like you take 18 different situations and put it in a minute and a half. And you just got to go. It's almost like room to room, door 1, door number 2, door number 3. Deal with it. And just see how people
deal with it
under stress. And
it's basically I'm looking for almost like a sensory overload, just to see how you cope with that amount of stress without ever physically putting hands on you. So it's all psychological and whatever physicality that you experience because of that. So I already people are super excited about it. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, sounds
I think
great.
it's going to be a good class, and it's going to, give guys a lot of reps. I mean, 3 days, basically, you guys can expect at least 24 runs.
Wow.
That's overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I think by day 2, dudes are going to be like, I'm not going to be drinking tonight. I'm just going to go. Hopefully, if I go to sleep now, I can get like a solid 9 hours, waking up, nightmares.
They're driving back to the hotel
Yeah.
with the radio off, just silence.
Yeah,
just thank God.
And then they sit in the parking lot for 20 minutes.
Psyching themselves up.
Because God knows I've done that.
Yeah.
I've had classes that were so intense. I got back to the hotel and I'm like,
I've had days like that with my 5 and 7, my 5 and 7-year-old. I mean, it was just like,
overwhelming.
Once they go to bed, you just sit down and just like, fuck.
Ian's like, hey man, how was your night? Like,
Don't ask.
Don't ask. And Kyle, what do you got coming up?
Oh man, we're trying to expand. We're trying to get as much stuff out as we can. We've been actually to move my office into the lumberyard because we moved all the back office guys over there because we're converting all our office space in our building now to production space, moving our lasers and stuff, and just really trying to get more product out there. We got some. Can't talk about too much. We do got some new products coming out next year. We start doing our charging handle this year, and we're going to start doing colored versions of the charging handles here soon. We've got some new barrels coming out, kind of an enhanced combat barrel coming out. We haven't really nailed down a name yet, but a little heavier profile chromoly barrel coming out.
I shot it. It's cool.
Yeah, we got the sample here. We've been shooting sub-OMLE groups with it all weekend, so it's doing really well. Let's see what else. We got some other exclusive guns coming out. I don't know when this is going to air, but they may have been out already by the time it airs. But we got the Grantham guns coming out in a couple weeks, so that'll be really cool. And
They're either already sold out or still in stock. So
you'll find out. We're probably going to
out.
sell out in about 5 seconds because he's got like 3 bajillion followers on Facebook. So, he was down in visiting us a couple of years ago, and I was like worried that like there's going to be like people hiding in the bushes trying to find him and stuff. And we love Mike. And let's see, I'm trying to think what else we got. All sorts of new stuff. We'll have we'll do a Steve Fisher gun next year. More of Aaron's gun will be coming out. We've got a whole big old thing. So if you're at SHOT Show, I don't want to talk about it too much, but we've got another kind of line launching, non-gun oriented, more hunting oriented line of stuff launching that's going to be at SHOT Show. So definitely come check our booth out.
the Sons of Liberty shotgun line, right? That's the rumor. That's the rumor.
That's definitely it. I mean, I'm pretty good at the pistol and pretty good at the rifle. I'm terrible at the shotgun. We got some guys that are really good with it, but Mike actually is really good at it. We go to like SOCA for shooting clays and stuff, and Mike's killing it. And I'm just an embarrassment with the shotgun. I'm like, not my
If I
bag.
get 50%, I'm doing good.
Yeah, it's not my bag, baby. Like it's just not my thing.
And you're out here, so I want to point this out before we get off this episode, is you're out here, on vendor day, you were out here as a vendor, but you're out here as a student.
Yeah, I'm
You're
here
out here
student all
training
3
away.
days, and we've got 4 guys that split 3 spots, so they're taking 2 classes, and they'll stay here because we're doing mobile armor services here at Shooter Symposiums. We've been fixing some guns, doing some upgrades, or buying parts from y'all, and we're putting them in. But yeah, I took Steve Red Dot pistol class yesterday. I've got night vision with Jamie tonight, and then I've got medical class with Carrie tomorrow from Dark Angel, because I haven't taken a medical class in like 3 or 4 years. And I'm like sitting there thinking, I'm like, man, if something happens to somebody, what am I going to do? And I'm like, all I've got's like the bullet points now. It's been so long, you know, pack the joints, use a tourniquet, seal the box. I'm like, shit, that's about where it ends. I'm like, all right, I need to go take a class.
We'll tune that up. And me and you were in a Green Ops LPVO class back in June, sweating our asses off.
That was a great class, actually. Me and a preacher were looking at the that Bruiser class that's coming out here in April.
Come out. Come out. It's going to be a fun time.
I think we might come out and take that scoped rifle class. It looks like a lot of fun. So doing that LVPO class with Mike Green, who's one of our other pro staffers, is you learn a lot, because it's I never think about it. One thing I never practice is like up close with an LVPO. And I'm like, man, I would always turn down to 1, but once I actually do it, I'm like, it actually kind of works better with a little magnification there, like old ACOG style 3x. So
it was definitely a good time, and I like seeing dudes out there that are, you're building guns and out there shooting.
Oh
so yeah, that's always phenomenal to have that kind of support out on the training side of the industry, along with the manufacturing side.
We encourage all our guys to take training. We give them a stipend every year to go take classes. They're out. These guys are out here for free. We brought them out here. Mike Green's local, so we try to. Mike's really good about getting our guys in his classes all the time. So he gives us a couple slots every time he does anything there in San Antonio.
Yeah, Mike's a good guy. I'm trying to peer pressure him onto the show. He needs to come up and get on our podcast.
Yeah, most of Mike's stories he probably can't tell. There's going to be a.
They're good stories.
He's got I love Mike. All our guys are great, man. Steve, Chuck, Aaron, Mike, Chris Woomer. They're all really good dudes. So, and then we got some other guys like SAPD. We've been getting more into the tactical games thing.
No, forget about old Will Phoebus wrangling all them cats.
Will is one of the hardest working people I think I've ever met in my life.
He's on it.
Yeah, there's certain days he'll come to me. He's just like losing his shit. I'm like, bro, take a day off. Just take.
Yeah, I met Will when he still worked for HSGI, and I've kind of followed along with him along the way. I've been out to his house a few times. He brought me out to Louisiana, did a class out there, used an old post office. That was pretty cool. But he's always been like, he realizes that I need things before I realize I need them, and that's always been very helpful. So having him on board, I think, has definitely been super helpful with just keeping, especially as the pro staff family grew.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And he's taking his vacation. That's one of our other pro staffers is Rich Mason out of Darcy, and he's going out to do Op 4 stuff out next week. So that's like his vacation, just going and shooting dudes in the face. Yeah. Makes him feel better. So
can't get more relaxing, honestly.
Yeah. Oh, that's another thing. Well, at some point next year, we'll be doing a. He's been really on my ass about it. Is Aaron Lewis, the musician, is also technically pro staff. He's a big varmint hunter, and that's not something we've really got into. But we're going to probably do some lightweight kind of varmint guns and some cool calibers. Cool. 22 Nosler, 6 arc, maybe like a Mark 10 and 22 Creedmoor, stuff like that. So we're kind of trying to figure out where we'll start. Aaron wants to do like all 8 calibers at once. So I was like, we'll start with a few. But super lightweight, cool stuff. I mean, he's a really good. I need to go out there and do it with him. He's a really good varmint hunter, and that's something I don't know him. I've never really done that. You kind of do it near San Antonio, but not really. You got to go out to like West Texas. So we got some cool projects coming up.
That's really cool. Looking forward to it. Aaron, Kyle, thank you
absolutely
very much for setting in and joining us. And dude, I'm going to go read a book.
You should.
It's going to be cool.
Think you'll enjoy it.
Where can people find information on you?
SageDynamics.org is the website, and then Instagram at Sage Dynamics. Twitter is where I get spicy political, so at Sage Dynamics on Twitter. I'm also on YouTube, Sage Dynamics. Basically, just Google Sage.
You've got a YouTube channel? What do you do on the YouTube channel?
I drop things, film videos.
I want to see this dubstep video.
I also have a Patreon. And I'm moving a lot of my content as far as video content to Patreon supported.
Cool.
Because, the gun industry, kind of needs to recognize that sometimes people put a ridiculous amount of money into their content. So I'm trying to give more support and more involvement back to people who have been following me for a long time so they get more say in what videos do take place. Because I'm not a YouTuber, so the video content I'm able to make, I want to give them more of a say in what they want to see.
Yeah.
And I think Patreon's a good way, or that kind of support is a good way for people to be able to do that. And I've had pretty good luck with my pilot program with Patreon I've been doing over the past year and a half. So a lot of the content's going to be moving towards Patreon. You'll still be able to get videos for free or whatever. But it's gotten to the point now where people are like, "Oh, I got to pay," and I'm like, "Yes, comrade, you do occasionally have to pay things."
Oh yes, let's get into that.
Not everything is ours.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's going to be the big thing as far as the video content side, and then I think that's pretty much it. Like Instagram, Facebook, obviously the YouTube thing, Twitter, and you can obviously email me on the website. You can find the course calendar for classes where I'm teaching, and first come first serve on those, of course. I'm running a wait list on a lot of the open enrollment stuff right now.
Fantastic.
So if you're like, hey, maybe in a year, go ahead and register now. Otherwise, you might not get in.
Yeah.
You need an OnlyFans. It's like I'm dropping stuff, but I'm naked.
Yeah. There you go. There you
It's
go.
another stream of revenue.
Yeah.
We joked that we were going to start an OnlyFans for Big Tex, but it's just us telling you when stuff's available on the website. In feet.
Yeah.
But no, we really appreciate y'all jumping on the show today. And for those viewers and listeners out there, if you've got something, you learned something from today's episode, please let us know in the comments. Hit the bell, hit subscribe, give us a 4-star rating, a 3-star rating. Just rate the fucking show, please. I'm going to probably edit that out, but just rate the show. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Boom. Oh, I didn't record any of that.